Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Welcome to another Girls Talking Life Extra. It's not a full show, just a short chat with a past guest to let you know what she's up to now. I am talking with Nicole Zasowski. Nicole was a guest all the way back on episode 9. If you haven't heard my conversation with her then, be sure to go back and listen. Nicole is a licensed marriage and family therapist, writer and speaker based in the state of Connecticut, where she lives with her husband, and she just gave birth to her second son. Congratulations, Nicole. She is an old soul who wears her heart proudly on her sleeve. Nicole loves using words to help others find an enduring peace and joy outside of circumstance. Today we are talking all about her new book, From Lost to Found, Giving Up What You Think You Want for What Will Set You Free. Here is my chat with Nicole. Hi there, Nicole. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you this morning.
I am so excited to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
We talked all the way back in January.
Yes.
You shared a little of your story with us. We were talking about relational and emotional health because you are a marriage and family therapist. And you hinted to a book that you were working on then. And it is time for that book to be released very soon into the world.
Yes, end of January, January 28th.
All right. So you did talk about your story, parts of it, and kind of what led you maybe to write that. Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. So about 8 years ago, we moved across the country from California to Connecticut. And what I didn't realize, that was a painful move for me because I lost, the typical things you lose in a huge move like that when you move across the country and know nobody. My community, I had a really great job. I felt very secure. And it kind of pulled the rug out from under me. What I didn't realize was that it was just the beginning of a season that could largely be characterized by change and loss. I lost tangible things, obviously, in the move, and then we ended up losing 5 babies to miscarriage and in that season as well, and received a diagnosis that makes that more likely going forward. But while I lost these tangible things, in the process, I also lost the props to my faith and these securities that I realized I had been clinging to that were kind of working for me up until that point.
Talk to me about props to your faith. I read that and I found that really an interesting statement.
Yeah. So I grew up as a Christian. And I would say that even now, I would say that my faith during those years was very real. But I would say that I didn't know I was supplementing it with my own performance, with perfectionism, which also played into my relationship with God. So I would perform for Him, believing that if I could just climb a little closer to His favor, that I could be safe and secure in, essentially getting what I wanted in this life. I sort of saw Him as a vehicle to the good life in the way that we tend to think about the good life. Dreams fulfilled, goals achieved. I saw Him as the power source of those things, giving me my peace and joy, and not Him being my peace and joy.
Got it.
And so when those things were removed, it was extremely painful because all of these things that I had relied upon to feel valuable, to feel secure, stopped working for me. And I was left empty-handed. But what I realized is empty hands, the gift of them, as painful as that is that they're open. And they're open to receiving a hope that doesn't disappoint and peace and joy that is ours no matter what's going on in our life. And that's not to say that we won't feel pain, but that we'll have something more sure to plant our feet on.
You mentioned not being brave enough to write this as your own story.
Mm-hmm.
and kind of thanking God that he gave this to you even, which is really countercultural.
Yeah. And I'll be honest and say that doesn't always feel good, even to me still. So I don't want to paint this picture that because I have that perspective now that I don't feel pain or don't wish it were different. Or I often have days where I wonder if God's good for me will ever look the same as what I feel is good. And the disconnect between those two can be really painful. But I do say with 100% conviction that God did gift me a story that I would have never been brave enough to choose for myself. And he taught me that, the struggles that we go through can also be an avenue of blessing. Even our most painful moments in our story can usher us into a deeper love and a deeper intimacy with him. And that a blessed person isn't, necessarily somebody who lives the good life from start to finish, but is actually ushered into that deep love and has been awakened to their hunger for Christ and is now ready to be filled with him alone. That's what it actually means to be a blessed person. But I think when we narrow our idea of blessing to only gifts that we receive, I think we're selling ourselves short. Because I used to think that God's rescue of us looked like, rescue from unwanted circumstances or a rescue from something unpleasant going on in our lives that we would prefer not to go through. Kind of this warm, cozy,
sure,
get it, happy ending kind of rescue. And sometimes it does look like that. And that is wonderful and worthy of our praise. Absolutely. But what I also realized is that his rescue often looks like prying our fingers off of things that we think we want that will ultimately hurt us. And that was the case in my story. He pried my fingers off things that I thought I wanted and probably would verbally, they were not all bad things, but they were keeping me from fully depending on him for my peace and joy. And they were keeping me numb when what I really wanted was intimacy with him. And so he will do what will ultimately protect us.
You were brave enough to write your story down.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that's coming out.
I think that takes a lot of courage to, just lay it out there on the table and kind of expose those parts of yourself. So what can people expect when they read your book?
What I'm really hoping for, as much as it is my story, I've written it in a way that writers, we have this phrase called writing it plural. And so each chapter has elements of my story. It also has ways for readers to process their own story. So readers' stories may not look like mine, but the reality is that none of us go through this life unscathed or without struggle or without longing for that thing that we are tempted to feel like carries our peace and joy. And so my hope and prayer is that as readers are reading this book is that they'll also be processing their own story and take the invitations in each chapter to understand, what are the things that I've lost? And in the process of losing those things, how did that, pull my hands off securities that weren't really working for me? And then what are the things that I tried to depend on and rely on that I realized promise more than they deliver? And then what is the truth that I have found? What is the meaning and blessing that I have found in the wake of what's been lost? And then how do I want to walk differently in that freedom? How do I want to not only know the freedom, because I think a lot of my readers might say, well, I know that, but I'm not trusting it or I'm not practicing it. And so the last section of the book is really talking about choice and practicing depending on that truth.
I think that sounds like great work really for anyone to do.
Yeah, that's my hope. I think we all have our version of this, like I said, and each of the 4 sections have, discussion questions at the end to either process on your own or process in a small group or with a friend. I'm a therapist, so I don't hold back when it comes to the questions. I don't pull punches. But they're the questions that I had to wrestle with, and they're the questions that have been the most meaningful as I began to process what was on my heart with my own community.
Where can people find this, Nicole? Where can I find my copy?
Anywhere books are sold. If you want, you can go to NicoleZasowski.com/book. That's NicoleZasowski.com/book. And it gives you places you can buy the book. And it also includes a list of freebies that you will receive if you pre-order the book. So if you order the book before January 28th, you just have to put your information in where you bought the book. And these freebies will be delivered probably beginning of December, or if you order the book after that, right to your inbox.
Okay, wonderful. What are some of the free gifts that people could get if they do the pre-order?
Oh, this is so exciting because it makes me feel like Oprah when I talk about this. So the first thing is a free audiobook chapter.
Great.
I know that with busy schedules and the time I certainly spend in the car, sometimes audiobooks are more realistic for a tired mama like me.
Yes, I feel that.
Yes. And then something I'm really excited about is a 30% off code to a company called Our Spare Change. And they make gorgeous jewelry out of recycled coins.
Wow.
And not only is it beautiful, what I love about them is they do custom words on all of their jewelry. So it's especially with a 30% off code, it's a really reasonable way and cost-effective way to give a really meaningful gift, especially since we're coming up on the holidays.
Yes.
So I have personally used their jewelry as like an opportunity to like do a gift of affirmation for my friends. Like I choose a word for each of my friends, or in a way that they've blessed my life, or a gift that I see in them that they may or may not see in themselves.
That's so special. I love that.
I know some of us pick words for the new year. Like, here's one word that I want to focus on. That's kind of been a trend in the last few years.
Yes.
So it's a great way to kind of wear that word and remind yourself to be reflecting on that idea throughout the year. So I just love the meaning in their jewelry. So you get a 30% off code to anything in their shop. You get a gorgeous custom designed art print that you can frame, that you can download, print, and frame with artwork from the book and a meaningful phrase from the book. And then 20 verses to accompany each part of the book. So just verses to reflect on that kind of make it bite-sized and simple. And then custom designed prayer cards that facilitate reflection and personal conversation.
That's a ton of wonderful stuff.
Yeah. So
yeah, I like it.
Yes. And my understanding, at least with Amazon, I hope this is correct, but my understanding is that even if you order now and the price drops that first time, you will get that guaranteed lower price, even if you order now.
So pre-order now, and then what is the date of the release?
January 28th.
Okay, so just in time for maybe New Year groups
Yes.
that are starting up?
Yes.
That sounds perfect.
Yes, that's the hope, is that this book sort of outlines a way that you can, instead of just, here's habits from the outside in that I would like to adopt to make my year better, what I'm hoping this book does is really create change from the inside out. And so starting with our hearts, starting with, moving on to our minds and that mindfulness, and then how do I want to live this out more freely in the year ahead.
Thank you, Nicole, for coming on and just giving us a little sneak peek about what this is going to be. Thank you for taking everything that you've learned over the last several years and putting it down in constructive, meaningful words for us. I so appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I love hearing from readers either on Instagram or on my website. So feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you and connect with you on any questions you have or parts of this story that are particularly meaningful for you.
I hope you loved hearing from Nicole again. She is so sweet, and I know her written words will be just as soothing. Like she said, her book releases on January 28th, but you have the opportunity to pre-order now and get some of the exclusive gifts she talked about. If you're thinking about leading a small group after the holidays, this will be such a great resource. Find all the book details at nicolezasowski.com/book. I know I really like the 30% off from Our Spare Change. There may be some people getting bracelets from them this Christmas. Thanks for tuning in, friends.